All right, so today we are talking about stages of production. So if you remember from yesterday, we looked at, as we increased the number of workers, we looked at how many airplanes we were able to produce, and we also looked at the marginal product. So in other words, how much our total product changed. Now, what we can tell about this, though, is that we can see 3 stages of production that happens. And this happens in real-life companies. In the short run, they see all 3 stages. So the first stage is what we call increasing returns. And when we have increasing returns, we have our total product and our marginal product are both increasing, just like it sounds. Okay? This happens when, okay, for example, yesterday when we started, and I told you, for example, our airplane activity, if we were doing it strictly the way we should have done it, was we start with one person at a group of 4 desks, and nobody else is sitting there. We start with one person, and we give them a whole bunch of paper, they have a huge amount of space, and they start making airplanes for 1 minute. Okay? And then we start adding people. We add a second person, and a third person, and a fourth person. And what we have happening in increasing returns is basically what's going on is we're actually using those resources. Okay? So before, when we started with one person, okay, we weren't using all of our resources. We had desks that were sitting there that weren't being used. Or we had paper that was sitting there not being used. So when we have increasing returns, what happens is that this is where we're actually using our resources. In a real-life company, what happens is that they, start up a company, maybe they have this great big warehouse, all this equipment, and they hire one person at a time. And slowly they start to actually use all of the equipment and all of the resources. And so as they use more of the resources, obviously they're going to be able to produce more stuff, and it's showing that their marginal product is going up, their total product is going up, everything's hunky-dory. Okay? Now, then we keep adding people. So if you keep adding people, more and more and more people, okay? Now we're getting to the point we're going to have something called diminishing returns. And when we have diminishing returns, what we have happening is that we are still adding a whole bunch of people, and we start to kind of overlap, okay? We start to have some overlap with what people are actually doing. So now this is going to be where, okay, we're adding people to your group of 4 desks, and we get to the point where we have one person in every single desk. Okay, that's good, but what if we keep adding people? What if we add a 5th person, a 6th person, a 7th person? What we're going to see happening is that they still have space, maybe you still have some paper that they can use, okay, they can stand around the desk, all right? So our total product is still increasing, but it's at a slower rate. Okay, so our marginal product is decreasing. So each additional person, we're getting to kind of the maximum amount of people that we can have, and we're kind of, having some overlap with space. People are using similar resources, they're doing similar things, and so we have a little bit of overlap, but our total product is overall still increasing. We're still able to produce more airplanes. Okay? Same thing happens in a real-life company where as you add more and more people, okay, what happens is that you're adding more people and you're kind of maxing out on your space. And maybe you have this, 2 people doing very similar jobs, but there's enough work for each of them, okay? But they're doing very similar things, okay? So they're still producing more, it's just at a slower rate, and our marginal product is decreasing, okay? Now, eventually you'll get to what we call negative returns. If you continue to add more and more and more people, now we're adding not only 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 people around 4 desks. Okay, we talked about this yesterday. What happens?
You can't get anything done.
You can't get anything done. There's way too many people for the amount of resources you have. Remember, we're talking about in the short run. So can you change the amount of desk space you have? No. Can you change the amount of paper you have? Not at all. So as a result, because all the other resources are fixed, they don't change, okay? What happens is you run into this problem where there's people there that don't have any work to do, and they get bored, and they distract other people, okay? Real life companies, I know you've had this happen at work. If you had a job before, have you ever had this happen where you go to work, you were scheduled to work. You go to work, you're there for maybe an hour, maybe more, maybe less, and they send you home early?
Yes.
Okay? Why do they send you home early?
Because they're not doing nothing.
They're not doing anything. There's too many, they scheduled too many people. Okay? Maybe it was because it's a slow day and they didn't expect it to be a slow day. Maybe it was a managerial problem and they really did schedule way too many people for the amount of activity they normally have on that particular day. But the reason they send you home is because they're paying you to stand around and do nothing. Okay? You're doing nothing, and when that whole idea of idle hands, what happens with idle hands? You get bored, what are you going to do?
You distract people.
You distract people. So somebody who actually has a task to accomplish and has something to do, you're bored, you're talking to them, you're distracting them, they don't get it done as quickly or as much as what they should have been doing. Okay? That's negative returns. That will happen if you continue to add and add and add and add more people. So is more people always a good thing?
No.
No. That whole idea, too many cooks spoil the broth, have you ever heard of that?
No.
No? Okay? Too many cooks in the kitchen, you're going to end up with a big mess because they're all going to be having their own opinions. All right, so anybody have any questions about these three stages? Will you please get out your production schedule from yesterday? I want you to find that, and on the left-hand side, I'm going to pull it up myself, on the left-hand side, I want you to see if you can label, kind of do some brackets, and label these three stages of production. Okay, so see if you can do some brackets and label the three stages of production. I'll pull it up here. So, what are you going to be looking at when you're labeling these?
Was that lime green say?
Huh? We're going to get to that today. Don't worry about that. Okay, these are the three columns that you should have so far. Don't worry about any of this stuff. I'm going to pull up this screen here. Don't worry about any of that stuff yet. We're going to add that. Okay, so don't worry about any of the other columns. What columns should we be looking at, though? Which specific column? Which of the three should we be looking at to determine the three stages? The first three. Okay, but we're looking for example, in increasing returns. So we know increasing returns are obviously going to start with 0 workers. Where does increasing returns stop? What workers? 9 workers? What are we looking for? Increasing returns, what happens in increasing returns? What happens to total product and marginal product? Total product is going up or down? Up. Total product's going up. What happens to marginal product? Marginal product is going up as well. What happens to when we get hit to diminishing returns? What's the only thing that changes? Marginal product goes down. So, Aaron, you already answered my question. At what workers does our increasing returns stop? 7. Why did you say 7?
At 8 people, the marginal product goes down, but the total product is still up.
Okay, so when you're looking at labeling these stages, look at the marginal product, okay? Because that's the one that's actually going to give you clues as to what happens, okay? Stage 3 is easy to pick out because total product and marginal product are negative. Okay, but if you're looking at the marginal product, you can see that at zero workers we can't tell. 1, 2, 3, 4, they're increasing. Marginal product is increasing up until the 7th worker. At 7 workers, we hit our high with marginal product. We hit our high of 9. Okay, so we have a very large stage 1 with increasing returns. Stage 2 is diminishing returns. So diminishing returns starts with 8 workers, and when does diminishing returns stop? At what worker? 9. Why? We have very small diminishing returns. Why do we stop at 9 workers for our diminishing returns? Aaron?
Because after that, both the total product and the marginal product go down.
Okay, because after that, our total product and our marginal product are declining. Big red flag for stage 3 and negative returns. What's our big red flag for negative returns? What screams at you, negative returns? This -3 in marginal product. Anytime you have negative returns, negative, you're going to have a negative marginal product. Okay? So make sure, okay, because this is what I will have you do is on your homework, you're going to need to be able to label the 3 stages of production. Okay? So the big thing that you want to look at is your marginal product. You want to look at as your marginal product increases, okay, that's going to be increasing return. Marginal product declines, diminishing returns. Marginal product becomes negative, negative returns. Follow? Okay. All right. We're going to come back to this in just a sec. I have one slide of notes that I want to fill you in on. So I'm